So that basically covers the make-to-order process. Just kind of to recap that a little bit, we entered a sales order. That automatically created pull on the final assembly cell. If there would have been lower level components that were make-to-order components, it would have created a pull on those cells as well. Our example today only had one level of a make-to-order pull. We could also view the Kanbans on the pegging tree. So sales was able to look at a sales order line, see what the status of the different Kanbans that are supplying this particular order, where are we at on them, the make-to-order components. We're able to transfer material to the line side. We did not talk about that. We'll talk about that shortly. We then prepared the Kanban, which basically would give us the ability to make it show up on the on a filtered view of the Kanban board. We produced the Kanban, which basically consumed any components, put it in inventory, and then we're able to ship the sales order, which we didn't do today, but we would be able to ship the sales order at this point. Okay, the next process that I'd like to talk to you about is basically withdrawal Kanban scenario. So think of, on your production floor, you may have some materials that you store at the line side, and you also have the central storage location for those materials in your stock room. And you may have a situation where you need to signal to tell you to pull those materials to that line side storage. Now that could be two scenarios. It could be a fixed Kanban scenario where you like to have two bins or whatever at the cell, and once one of those bins is emptied, it goes back to the stock room and they refill it. Or it could be a card situation. Or a third additional situation might be, this is a component that it's not used very often, so you really don't want to store it line side. When you get a requirement for this make-to-order component that uses that part, it'll tell you to pull that specifically for that order. So we're basically supporting the make-to-stock system with the fixed Kanban. We're supporting the make-to-order with the sales event and the Kanban line events, which are the component telling you to make a component that's a make-to-order component. So really supporting all three different situations. So let's pop over and we'll look at the Kanban transfer board. That's called the transfer jobs board. So basically, again, what this is telling you is it's showing you the materials that need to be transferred basically from one location to another. So in this case, it's saying we need to transfer it from the stock room, in this case, to the assembly area. So a water spotter would see this particular board. He'd pull up this Kanban board. He'd be able to look at his picking list and say, oh, well, I'm going to pick these different items. Oh, I can't pick that one. It's not there. I can't pick that one. It's not there. So I can go ahead and pick these. And when we say complete, it's actually going to do a transfer in the system to transfer it to that other location and basically move the inventory in the system. It is possible to do this without actually doing inventory transactions. So there might be situations where a company doesn't really want to track the detailed inventory transactions. They just want to have a Kanban that tells them to replenish it, and we can support that as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to have the inventory on hand and move it. It can actually just say, hey, you're out of this, bring more, and it doesn't even keep track of perpetual inventory of that particular item. We have some customers that are interested in doing that. We'll call it the black hole approach. So that's basically a transfer situation. The system is basically, you've emptied a Kanban, it tells you to bring more, and tells you specifically where to move it, and a water spotter can monitor that transfer board to see what parts might need to be picked and where they may need to be moved throughout the day. The next process we're going to talk about is called CTP. And again, that acronym is capable to promise. And basically, earlier we looked at the schedule board, and we'll pop back out there again in a minute and kind of show you how that works. But there's a capacity that's set per day per cell. And what this is doing is, at the time that you enter the sales order, it's going out and it's looking at that daily capacity, and we could set it up to where it'll look at material availability as well, so that it'll give you a promise date that is achievable. And a lot of systems that I worked with in the past, you start looking at trying to do that with a routing and estimated hours, and it's really difficult. What this is doing that's significantly different is this more looking at your throughput rates. It's looking at how many you can produce typically in a day, and then when you have more complex items or less complex items, you can actually put a ratio on those so that they'll basically consume that throughput ratio differently. If you had the normal average item that goes through there would consume 1, for instance. A really difficult item might consume 2. So when you think of that as a daily bucket of capacity, and as you're loading sales orders in, it's consuming that daily bucket of capacity until it's gone, and then you'll load another order and it'll keep pushing out and be able to give you a promise date back to the customer that's based on an achievable schedule looking at that daily capacity. So once it does that, just as in our example, we had this turned on for our example. So the sales order that I entered a minute ago, this functionality was invoked. It basically went out and scheduled the Kanban when it could. It looked at the date the customer requested it and then schedules it as close to that as possible. If it can't make their date, it's going to tell you it's got to push it out. So, and then the process is the same. They're going to prepare, start the Kanban, produce the Kanban, and ship the sales order. So really there's not a whole lot different to show you there. We'll review that particular sales order that we had a minute ago and kind of show you what the difference is in that one, what the CTP is really doing behind the scenes. So I'm going to open up that sales order in the detail view. Again, I'm going to go look at the pegging tree, and I see that it created these Kanbans, and now I can see that that top level Kanban has been made. So a good quantity of 50 has been made. The second one, none has been made at this point. If I go out to the schedule date in the system, the delivery date, this was the customer's requested date, and he requested it on 4/10, the system went out and said, well, you can do that because you have plenty of capacity. So really, how did it know that? We'll go back and we'll pop out to the Kanban schedule board, and we'll go to the assembly cell. So the system knew that on the 9th, when it tried to schedule that, it had plenty of capacity, and those 2 orders consumed 100 of those 300 pieces. So if I kept loading orders, it's going to keep loading this schedule. It's going to run out of time. And then if I kept entering orders for the same day, once it consumed the capacity here, then it's going to basically schedule it to go into the future, and it's going to give them a promise date in the future. So that's how the CTP, or capable to promise, functionality works. And if you're really interested in that, we can go into that in more detail in a detailed demo with you.